Good morning, everyone. Will Mosley here, and I wanted to start. I don't exactly want to say new series, but I want to start showcasing how I'm creating all these films, and I think it's good content to make when you've, of course, finished a project. But also, I haven't really been feeling like picking up the camera lately, so diving into existing work and showcasing a good bit of that and the how-tos behind that, I think will be very beneficial to anyone that's trying to learn how to use Final Cut Pro, anyone that is new to post-production, and I'll also be dropping a lot of fundamentals of just overall story and how to create films in general. So anyone new to the filmmaking medium, I think can benefit from this. So you'll see some red right here. You'll see some. This means like music's missing. So I'm going to start kind of from the beginning of typically how I create a film, or after I get it into post, and yeah. So first and foremost, let's pull up. Some of this media is missing, which is absolutely fine because I want to show just a real case of how to do all this. Let's see. So it looks like this whole film was mainly shot July 26th. So I'm going to go ahead and bring up the Finder, reveal in Finder. And let's make this a little bit bigger so you can see it. So typically, I have a very simple project organization kind of workflow. It's taken me years, honestly, to get it down to this simple. But pretty much, I have a folder for media archive or media, which is then divided by year. We're only on the current drive right now. I have years before this, but this is just the drive that I work on, so that gets filled up pretty quickly. I also have a folder for a logo, for soundtrack and stock. Project files is a big one, so you can see I use Camtasia, Final Cut Pro, Illustrator, Logic, Sublime, so you'll see like code files and stuff like that in there. Reference is like a kind of catch-all for a lot of things that just get thrown in there. Final, that's a big one. So typically films, podcasts are roughly like in flyers and things like that are typically what you'll see in this folder. So this could be, it's just kind of the name of whatever the medium is. So if this is a brochure or a business card, I'd have a folder for each of those types of mediums, and then from there, however I want to kind of break it down. I also have a folder for clients, screenshots, because I have a million screenshots, and then a folder also for my wife because she does photography, and it makes it easy to kind of get to that stuff. So I said the July 26th, I believe, was our date. You'll see in the current drive we have files all the way back to April, which these will need to be moved or taken off here pretty soon as the hard drive is filling up. I'll show you just real quick about this Mac storage. So 700 megabytes, 699 megabytes is actually very low, very small, not even a gig. So we're actually probably going to have to clear some space while we're doing this project right here, right now. So just all real good, real world problems and things that you'll run into as you create films. So we'll do that after I show you kind of this. Every day, I pretty much just create a folder. 2020, 0725, so July 25th or June 22nd or whatever the day is, and I pretty much just dump all my cards in there, and you can see that this day was a pretty big day that I captured a lot. Let's see how many files we have in here. 96. So anywhere from like 96 to like 300 files on any given day that I actually do film. But they're not like super long. They're really short files. You can see this is like 29 megabytes. Just kind of short files. So sorry, that kind of blasted your ears. So let's go ahead and take care of the storage, because we're going to need storage obviously for this. So typically when I start a project, like a brand new project, I'll go to the top of the library here, and this is actually a backup library. So we'll pull from the original one in just a second, but I'll go to the library, click File, Delete Generated Library Files, and you have the option to delete unused, all, or and I typically do all, but seeing as we're about to jump into a project, I don't want to kill all the render files that are going on with this one project, so I'm going to delete unused only. And it may not clear up that much. It may not make that huge of a difference. You can see over here, this is typically how much space it's taking up. So let's go ahead and check and see how much space we have now. See if that did anything. Okay, that gave us about 30 gigs, which is good. This is perfect for what we need to do. Typically with any project that I work on, the render typically takes about 100 gigs. So if I were to clear this, I'd get up much more space, but know that when you're doing this. Yeah, so cool. Let's go ahead and jump into the process of how I do this. So this was on the 26th. You'll hear Titan in the background. It's my son. Let's see. Let's go ahead and actually import this from the Finder, and then we'll jump back to this project. So I'll create a new event, and then I'll just name this 7-26, and then I'll just kind of name it like tutorial or something. And I make vertical films. Not the absolute common thing to do, but the reason why I make the reason why I make vertical films is most of the mediums that I post to are, vertical centric. So I'm posting to Instagram and Facebook and TikTok and all of those mediums, which the natural orientation is, of course, portrait. So it just makes sense. It's a big shift in how you film. So if you're just getting started out filming, I wouldn't specifically recommend it just to start off unless you're up for a challenge, because there are a lot of different aspects and things that you have to take accountability or take into account when you do, and it can be a little bit juxtaposition when you're first starting out learning the medium. But you'll get to look kind of at my vertical film process right here. 24 frames per second, just the flip 1920 by 1080, and we're going to click OK on that, and I'll show you how I pull the footage in, and then I think I'll stop this one and pick this one up in a bit, so you look out for that video as well. So here we go. We have an untitled project. A lot of times when you're getting this in, I don't worry too much about having some solid title when I first get started. This one, let's see what I ended up picking. This one was the one where it was Creative Depression, but I'm pretty sure that I just had like creative. Let's see, creative. Let's name it creatively stuck or something like that. I don't really think too hardcore about the title. It'll come to me as I create the film. So after that, I double click in. It's time to import our footage. When I'm importing, I don't import through Final Cut Pro. I typically import just like you would from the Finder, and then I'll import in Final Cut, but not copy. Like I'll just import from that folder that I pulled in. So if you look at our media, same file right here. We're going down from Media Archive 2020, and then we're going to 726 right here. And then we'll go ahead right here. It says leave files in place. I actually skip creating optimized media, but if your computer has a bit of problem with like loading and rendering things like that, that's good. Proxy is if you really are handling huge files. I'm talking like 4K files, 6K, whatever. It'll create proxies, and it takes much longer if you do proxy media. But typically I just kind of skip all this stuff. Sometimes I'll add, tags from the folders. I don't do the find people. I don't analyze video balance or any of that. All this stuff just adds a lot more time to the processing. And I find that I can just kind of do all this stuff myself as I need to. So leave files in place, add to existing event. That's where we want to put it. And then we'll go ahead and import, select it. Take a sip of my coffee here. Hope everyone's doing well today. So you can see at the bottom, it has 97 files like we expected. I'll pull this out just a little bit so you can kind of see it a little bit better. And I won't go in, at least right this second, I won't go into all the different types of shots here. I really kind of want to go over the how to import and how to kind of initially get your project on the timeline, and then in the next one I'll continue on with this process. So we got our files into Final Cut. Now what do we do? Well, you could what I do like about Final Cut Pro is that it puts it all in chronological order, which is great. We have this one file here that says 2008. That's just because the date wasn't correct in the audio file in the recorder that it was recorded from. But whenever you shoot, it's best to kind of get it in the day of, because you have a good idea of what you're filming, what you're starting with. So what I like to do is, depending on the film, I'll go over here, actually search. Let's see. I'll search, and then typically if I'm shooting slow motion, I can go to format info. I can change this to video frame rate, and because sometimes I shoot in 59 frames per second, which I don't think any or most was done here, but here goes a couple files. I can then highlight those, right click, assign an audio roll, and kind of make that like a highlight. Typically like slow-mo stuff is like a highlight for me. Let's also talk about these audio rolls, because these don't come default with Final Cut. I created these, and it may seem a little bit weird because you would think they should be assigned to video rolls, but the video rolls I find sometimes don't show up, the color doesn't show up in your timeline, so that's why I use audio rolls instead. But as far as audio rolls, I just use it to be able to divide out the content. So the default one is like dialogue, effects, and music. Those all come default. And then I have one for, and probably going to scratch this DSLR one for focus, which is really important. So whatever, if I'm doing like a talking head, it's a long talking head, I can use that as a way of marking that. One for if I'm doing, say, like an illustration or a top down. One if it's like a screen recording or like a phone recording. Secondary storyline, if there's something else that's going on that's not absolutely fundamental to the film that's kind of long, I'll mark it with secondary storyline. Talking head, if it is like me talking but it's not specifically about the focus of the film. And then like voiceover, if I'm doing a voiceover. The only ones that I have to do a video roll with is ones that don't have actual audio channels, which is the drone. And yeah, so let's kind of come back here. to be able to kind of determine this information, this, while you're organizing, doesn't really help you that much. What does help you is if you click this down and change this to duration, group by duration. Now you can see, okay, these are my 10-second ones. Okay. These are my, let's say skip 30 seconds, 30 to 60-second ones. If it's 30 to 60 seconds, there's definitely something going on in there. And I typically start out by saying, okay, this is talking head. But because there's a lot of like me just walking and stuff like that, I can see just by default that most of these aren't talking. But you can tell, like if you look at this right here, you can see me. So I can right click this, assign this, and this is a 1 to 10 minute clip. So I know it's very long. Assign as focus. This is a voiceover, I can tell you that right now. Assign that as a voiceover. DJI, anything that says DJI, of course, is going to be a drone clip. DJI, right there. Assign as a drone. And that's all we'll do for the time being. I usually go much more in detail with all these things. But let's go ahead and put this in chronological order and pull it to our timeline, and then we'll follow up in our next film or our next lesson. So we're going to resort it by content created, and then we're going to highlight all this, Command all, pull it to our timeline. So everything's in order. We see we have 59 minutes here, which is actually a pretty daunting task, but promise we'll get through it and it's not too crazy. So let's go ahead and pull this over here. And that's pretty much what the timeline looks like initially when you first get started. So in our next lesson, we'll go over how to take this and break it down into something that's, not too crazy to go through, and come up with a finished film from that. All right. Thank you for listening, watching, learning, and check out the next one as it comes up. And of course, if you do need an e-commerce store or anything of that nature to sell your goods online, you can always go over to Mosley.com to get a quote, and I can hook you up. All right, catch you guys on the next one. Peace.